Welcome back to another episode of TVGP's Critical Misses, show where we're catching up on all the media hits we missed. We're hitting up another Poets of the Fall album this time. I'm your host, Boston. Joining me, as always, is Moonpear.
Hi.
We're going to be doing 2006 Carnival of Rust this time, which is
Yep.
quite a title that I feel like is is almost like a.
It's a really good title.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of like it'd be like a Nine Inch Nails bootleg, like a live album where it's like, oh yeah, Carnival of Rust, something like that. So I think we're melding our two music seasons so far here. Um,
hmm
what are your kind of overall as pre-listening thoughts of Carnival of Rust?
Oof. I think it's funny because I'm pretty sure this was one of those albums that I always liked. And to be honest, it was my number 2 album by Poets of the Fall. Which I'm actually very curious now if it's going to end up being my favorite because I seem to remember this one having wall-to-wall bangers,
Okay.
like across the board.
Hmm.
There's a lot in here, which just looking at the titles of each of the songs, I'm like, yeah, that's a good song. That's a good song. I like that song. That's a great song. That's a good song. I'm like, uh-oh.
Well, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this album too, especially after um, coming out of
The
the previous
re-examination.
album, kind of a little bit cooler than I think you were expecting. Not that it's, as we said in the last episode, not that it's a bad album, but I think you kind of came out with higher highs and lower lows than you were expecting. So I'm kind of curious to hear what you think coming out of this one, being like, all right, is this still wall to wall bangers, or have I kind of do you have a different opinion about it this time?
Yeah, I'm super curious about that too, to be completely honest. It's like, okay, how am I gonna feel knowing that I still love the first album, but it's not my favorite, or I don't think it's as good as I felt it was.
Right.
So I'd be very, very curious as to exactly how this is going to do in comparison.
Right. Um, I'm especially curious about this one because I think, as we said in the last episode, I think coming out of the first one is like, all right, these kids have promise. Let's see where they go. Very much that kind of
Uh-huh.
attitude of like, this is pretty good, but I'm waiting to see once they kind of keep stretching their talents, and once they kind of maybe settle into where they want to go, kind of musically, sonically, however you want to think of that. Um, it's interesting that this album comes just a year, like the next year after the first one. Um, so I'm curious to see if maybe Time on the Road has solidified their sound potentially, because it seems like
Yeah.
they were a fairly big hit pretty immediately. Like those first couple of singles off the first album seemed like they did really well right away. Um,
Yeah. Especially in the non-American markets, which Americans seem to forget that. Yes, you have a big market, but it's not the biggest market.
I become uncomfortable when it's not about me. Is like America's media market. Um, um, so I'm
We're
kind
only
of
going to
curious.
pay attention to the sales numbers when it's reported by the American company about sales in America.
Right. So I'm kind of curious to see, because you always see there's always a challenge when a band comes out with their second album of,
Mhm.
did lightning only strike once with the first album? Did the 15 years you were working on the first album do good things, and then maybe the 6 months while you were touring on the road and kind of very quickly churning out what you hope to be another huge hit? Is
Mhm.
that going to be good, or is it sort of like, yeah, no, we just turned out another really good album while we were also touring? Yeah, no big deal. Um,
Yep. And then after this, it's like literally every 2 years for like almost like 12, 14 years, they stick out an album every 2 years without fail.
that's wild, man. I always respect artists or bands or whatever that can do that, where it's like we're touring and we're writing new stuff and we're just kind of putting out a new album every other year, like every 3 years, something like that. And sometimes it's not always the best. Like I mentioned Chevelle in the last episode. They're putting out an album like every 2 or 3 years. They're pretty similar each album, but I kind of dig it. There's always like this level of consistency.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
like
always
this is '06, then it's '08, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and then a gap all the way through to 22.
wow, wild. I respect them for being so prolific and just like churning out. And then looking at some of their discography, it's like, yeah, we got a couple of live albums here. We got like a B-sides album, like rarities and stuff here. So like they're putting out a pretty good amount of work. I give them a lot of credit.
There's a couple of songs on that B-side album which I will recommend when we get roughly to that point in the timeline.
Sure.
But let's not also forget that they also have the Old Gods of Asgard in the background churning away as well.
That's
But
true.
that's like every 6 years when a new Remedy game comes out.
Right, right. Yeah. Sam Lake gets him on the phone and says like, hey guys, we got a new thing. Here's some concept art. You want to make a track or two for this? Which I kind of dig. It's a great friendship, like Kojima and Jeff Keighley. They're just gonna stick with each other till the end of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm kind of not sure what to think about this album. Other than I'm pretty excited to check it out. I think I felt more positively about the first album than I was expecting, and I'm kind of curious to see where this one goes. I also realized I didn't even look for this first album, but I'm gonna have to look for this one about music videos because this is 2000s, so people are still making those.
So I was just about to say I really like the aesthetic of Carnival of Rust.
Okay.
It is very much a creepy clowns aesthetic.
Okay.
And most of the music videos have that kind of theme going throughout them too.
Sure, like a decrepit carnival sort of thing.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, it's really cool. And
Yeah.
I think their lyric writing gets better from this album going forwards. I would say lyrically, I feel like it has more punch to it in these songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that was one of our criticisms of the first album. Was like, yeah, there could be a little more teeth behind these. Like, you don't have to be mean or anything, but maybe there's like lean into it a little bit more. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, should we go listen to the album?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Welcome back. We have returned. We're back from listening to the album. Carnival of Rust. I've got my notes up here. I have remembered to rate each track this time.
Yay!
So I
in
did.
your defense, I added that like 25% of the way through the last musical season.
That's
true. That was like, almost 2 years ago now, I think.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And also in my defense, my brain is bad. So,
Oh. Sure.
Okay, let's start off here with me punching my mic. Sorry. With the first track, Fire. I'm kind of impressed with the first half of this album, especially how it opens, because it is distinctly different from the previous one in sort of saying like, hey man, we've been on the road for a while, we've been practicing a lot, we got some money, we got like some production chops here. How about we kind of stretch it immediately?
Yup.
And it's got a pretty different intro than I think we have heard in previous stuff.
Yeah, this album feels so different. I did not expect it to feel as different as it felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was surprised.
Yeah, and I'm kind of happy because that was my hope going into this, as we talked about it in the first part, is like after the success, kind of runaway success of the first album, they're very
Mm-hmm.
popular. It seems like first album sold super well. This one sold even better. With that popularity and money and fame and all that stuff, can they kind of take the next step here? And I think for the majority of the album, it sounds like they successfully did that. That
Mm-hmm.
production quality is way better out of the gate.
Yes, that is distinctly noticeable. That this
Yep.
feels a lot more fleshed out, we'll say.
hmm And you certainly can't fault a band for having their first album sound not like underproduced, but kind of like, this is the budget we had. Like, this album immediately sounds way richer, and it sounds way better right away. And I like how they kind of flex that here in this first track. I don't know if there's anything super memorable other than that, other than like, wow, all right, yeah, I think you guys are figuring it out here. I gave it a
Mm-hmm.
3 out of 5, and those are like the only notes I wrote of just sort of like, yeah, right, you came here with a good intro.
I honestly forgot how much I love this song. Like I loved it before. I probably love it even more now
Mm,
because of recent events, we will say. Recent
okay,
meaning the past couple of years, but
sure,
the whole theme of the song like speaks to me more now than it probably did back then.
right.
Um, so it's like, okay, yeah, I mad respect to this song. I really genuinely do love it.
hmm that is followed with a song that is better than its title suggests, of "Sorry Go Round." Um,
Uh-huh. I do not like that title. I especially hate the fact that the title, I believe, isn't even mentioned in the song,
no, it isn't,
which is
but
unusual.
yeah. But I do like this song a lot. This is probably one of the stronger songs on the album for me. I am usually I was thinking about this when I was listening to the song. I'm usually pretty I don't really like when bands do a lot of repetitive stuff, especially in the chorus, and I
Uh-huh.
almost wonder how much of that is like Nirvana PTSD for all of us that lived through through that being like, like
True.
"Smells Like Teen
I
Spirit" being on the radio for 10 times an
I
hour.
also I also remember that we had this exact discussion in the Nine Inch Nails season with "Every Day Is Exactly the Same"
Right,
and how much I adore that song compared to how much you hate it, despite the
right,
fact that the theme of the song is everything's the same,
exactly.
and you
Yeah,
hate the fact that everything's the same.
right. But I have to say, on this song, the chorus of kind of the repeated go round, I think actually really works for it. I think they push
Uh-huh.
it just as far as it needs to be, and I think thematically with the kind of the lyrics of the song, I think it actually works really well, which I sort of wasn't expecting. Um, and I kind of dig that they had fun with this and they leaned all the way into the line, but everybody wants to be a rock and roll star, and then he kind of
Uh-huh.
like
He
on
does
stage
the wail on
screams
the
it.
guitar.
Yeah, and then does like a butt rock solo for like 15 seconds. It's like, all right, you know what? You had a little fun with it. You leaned all the way into it. I like it. I respect it. 4 out of 5.
Uh-huh.
I like this track a lot. It doesn't do anything super crazy new, but I think it's a really solid song.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I thought that this was one of my disappointments. It's ironic because I think you said you like this overall, just as a lead in, you said you like the first half of the album more
Hmm
than the back half of the album.
Right.
I like the beginning, I don't like the middle, and I love the end.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
uh,
I'm curious to see where we kind of diverge here. Um,
uh-huh.
Next track here is the titular track, "Carnival of Rust." Um, this does have a video which I watched, which was pretty okay. I like the wink and nod of like, here are all the song titles in the background of this video. Wink.
Uh-huh.
That was kind of fun. Um, I feel like if there is number one, this sounds like a song that they would still play live in 2022. It sounds like one of those songs where it's like, we've played this every year, and every time you should see this in a live set every time. And I feel like this song, out of probably any of the tracks on the album, feels the most like they're getting it. Like this, I think this is our sound in maybe not the band for the. I think there's like 15 more albums, so I don't expect the sound to be to stay the same. But I get the impression that this is kind of like, if I was in Poets of the Fall and we made the song, I'd be like, all right, yeah, we figured it out. Like this is the song that I think kind of sounds like Poets of the Fall.
Yeah, I think that honestly, when people like ask me about Poets of the Fall, if I know they have a Tool Perfect Circle influence in their history, this is the song I recommend to them.
Right.
Because it feels like it's just close enough to that to be familiar and good, but also unique enough to be themselves.
Yeah, because it has like the Poets of the Fall, like it opens almost like a ballad, and it's kind of it's kind of leaning towards that end of the spectrum for Poets of the Fall, and then about halfway through, it does the normal like rock song kind of kick up, and it's like, all right, here come the drums, all right. But I feel like it does everything really well, and I would agree with you. I think if anyone's like, oh, what's up with Poets of the Fall, it's like, yeah, you should probably listen to this one. This is kind of a good marker for these guys.
Yeah.
And man, does his voice sound super strong in this. Like
I think this is the song that made me appreciate his voice when I first started listening to them. It was like, oh, okay, dude's got some chops. Okay.
Oh, you're a singer. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, I think there's a couple of songs on this album that's sort of like, all right, like you've been maybe working with a vocal coach, like you've been pushing your voice a little bit more, and I think it's starting to pay off a little bit here.
Yeah, it's also clear, like really clear. Like the dude can hit some solid notes and tones and everything else in between, but it's always clear, and I kind of like that. Like, as someone who likes a lot of screaming and grit and everything else, it's good to have a band in your back pocket that's just a good, clear singing band.
Well, and I think on that note too, I think there's a real there's a lot of care taken on acoustic guitar on this album, making it very clear and sort of pushing it a little bit more to the front of the mix, like making it a little bit more pronounced. And I think that works really well for this album. And I think that's primarily when I'm talking about like the production being really solid in this album, is it's mixed super well, and like everything sounds like it's in the right place in the mix at the right time. And I think this album is produced really well.
Yeah,
that was a 4 out of 5 for me. I think those two tracks back to back are I think really solid. Locking Up the Sun is the next one. Didn't like this one at all.
This one's weird because depending on my mood, I can adore this song and I can absolutely hate it.
Right.
It probably doesn't help that I was listening to this album at the same time that Heroes was airing.
Gotcha.
And this feels like an ode to Hero from Heroes.
Okay. It's very specific, but I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. I hear it.
It's probably not, but you know, it's one of those things where it's like, did you guys like, was this supposed to be like in the show and they didn't go through, so you just released it?
Well, and it's also kind of a bummer because like Foo Fighters' Hero is out there, and that is still an outstanding song, and I feel like it got so popular that this song is sort of like, yeah, but there goes my hero. Watch him as he goes. You know, like I think it's a fine song. I think the chorus being kind of cheesy sort of ruins it for me. But I do think a lot of the keyboard and kind of keyboard effect work on this one I like a lot. This is another one where like they push that up in the mix to kind of focus on that, and I don't think we heard that. Maybe not this clearly in the first album, and I think this is the first song I can think where it's kind of called out specifically of like keyboards. Here we go, and it's like, all right, that was pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, we do get some piano later on in this album, but this is definitely the
Hmm.
first like real hint of it where it's like, yeah, by the way, we do have a pianist as well, just so you know.
Right. It's that guy over there, back at the back of the stage. He's sitting there doing his thing. Um, Next track is Gravity.
Hold on, you didn't give
Oh,
me a number.
oh, sorry. 2 out of 5. It's fine,
Thank you.
but it's all right. Gravity is up next. Um, I wrote this as a firm 3 out of 5. This is kind of and I don't think it's bad. This is kind of like a standard cookie cutter kind of song. There's nothing really wrong
Hmm.
with it. It's not. It is not great, and it is not bad. It's just solid. It's like
Yes.
it's a workhorse song. It's gonna
Yeah.
do its thing, and it's fine. It's a little bit forgettable, I think, but there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just good.
Yeah. I like the theme of the song. I do not like the song itself.
Okay,
Like, this is one of those ones where it's like I love the lyrics and the message. I do not like the instrumental side of this song.
right.
And it's not the song's fault. It's just it didn't click with me, which is
Hmm.
perfectly fine. We need to reiterate again and again and again.
Well, and this album feels like it has like 45 tracks on it, so like there's gonna be one or two songs where it's just like, it's fine. Um, Next up is King of Fools. Here's a song with a really good bass line.
Mhm.
There's some good guitar work, but man, that bass is just kind of like it's kind of walking in the background the whole time, and I kind of dig that a lot. Um, this is another one that lyrically I think is okay. This is for me. This is another kind of 3 out of 5. But it's
Mhm.
another one where I just wish it had a little bit more teeth. Like we have talked about, Poets of the Fall isn't a main band. It's not like Double Middle Fingers, Stepdad, nothing like that.
Yes.
But like, it's another one like we talked about last album where I just wish there was a little bit more teeth behind, just a little bit more bite, and I think that would have done pretty well, or like a little bit stronger wordplay. Um, like the kind of meanest line here is, and if they had a king for fools, would you wear the crown? And it's like you're getting there, but like I want a little bit more teeth, but I don't think that
Mhm.
hurts this song at all. Um, it's pretty
No,
good.
and I think this is fine.
Hmm.
For me, this is another one of those songs which is very much like the last one.
Hmm.
Like, there's something about it I like. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I
Same.
don't think it's my favorite my favorite song on this album. In fact,
Hmm.
it doesn't even scratch my favorite album on this, my favorite song on this, to be honest.
Are we well in
Um,
the kind of the doldrums of this album for you by this point? Like the
yes,
middle third? Okay.
literally, Gravity and King of Fools are my two low points, I
Oh,
think.
okay. Okay. Yeah, the rough part about those two songs especially are like they're just fine. Like it's one of those
Hmm.
things where you could probably cut them and release them as B-sides and like, yeah, that's fine. There's somebody's favorite song, but probably not a lot of people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Next up is Roses. Uh I have listened to this song a whole bunch and I don't remember anything about it. It is like water off a duck's back for me. Like I know it's not bad. I just my brain is just in one ear and out the other. So I am very sorry, Poets of the Fall. I cannot remember this song. I listened to it literally like 45 minutes ago and I don't remember because I thought this is the last thing I'm going to listen before we do the show. Just that way I can remember it, and it's not up there anymore.
Yeah. I don't even know why, but I adore this song.
Okay.
Like, there's a this is one of the few songs on the album I think that has a dark undertone to it. Like we
Yeah.
discussed on the first album, a lot of the songs are positive. Same with this
Yes.
album. There's a lot of positivity in the song. Like King of Fools, yeah, is that me? Is this a good relationship, a bad relationship, whatever? Like Locking Up the Sun is, I hate to use this phrase because it's a different song. It's holding out for a hero, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, there is positivity in pretty much everything of it. This is the one that feels like it's a little bit more dark-sided. This is
Hmm.
the dark middle chapter of the album.
Right. Right.
Um, and I adore this song. Like I love the chorus. I'm not gonna sing it because I can't
Yeah.
sing.
That's not
I
what you're
can't.
here for.
I'm just I'm just terrible at it.
Yeah.
Um, but I love the chorus. I love so much about this song. But I get it. Like it can be one of those songs. I could see where you're coming from. Where it's like, yeah, I can't remember it. It's like that's
Yeah.
fine.
And
It's not.
there's no malice behind it. I just like
Mhm.
I can't remember. I mean, there's albums I love that I listen to like 50 million times, and I'll listen to it and be like, "What's this track? Is that a beast? No, okay, that's just been there since like 1994. All right, cool. All right,
Yeah, that's your
yeah,
9 Inch Nails talking right there.
that's right. Next track here is I didn't rate that one either because I don't know. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
get.
You listen
Hold
to it
on,
a
I'll do
bunch.
my best. Adam Sessler before he became a transphobe. I give it a 3 out of 5. Um,
Okay. There we go.
Next song here is Desire. Um,
Oh, oh, can I go first, please?
please. Any song that gets a reaction like that, please.
I hate this song.
Oh, thank God. I just,
Like, and this is gonna sound so bad, but this is my legitimate notes as I was writing it. I
uh,
am not a fan. This feels like a bonus track from the acoustic sessions.
yeah. Also, it starts off with him speaking. This is a song about desire. It's like, nope, already. Mm-mm. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I don't. No thanks. MTV
I really
Unplugged
don't
is.
like this song.
Yeah, I rated this a 2 out of 5. It is a ballad by numbers, really. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is just I love this person. I'm going to sing a ballad about how they're good and I'm not, and it's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I hate that song so much. It's
Sorry.
literally every time I listen to the album, that's the song I skip. Every other song I
Yep.
will listen to, Desire is the song I skip. It
And I
also
think
doesn't help that Desire is followed by the next song, which I have completely opposite opinions of.
okay. I think the hard part too about Desire is this is kind of the beginning of where the album starts to kind of decline for me. Not
Hmm.
not that it's bad. I'm just so this there's a lot of tracks on this album, and I by the time it hits the halfway point, I'm sort of like, all right, we need something here, which they do here in a little bit, but um, the next track is here all the way slash for you, number
Yep.
4 uppercase U. Um,
Hmm.
I
It's actually written that way in the lyrics too, by the way.
right, which is I mean I
Odd.
appreciate a theme if anything. Um, this one for me kind of goes between like a 2 or 3, maybe give it like a 2.5. I kind of like that they put a very soft song here. Like you could have probably put this as the last track and it would have made sense. Um,
Yeah.
really good acoustic guitar work, like really solid work throughout
Yeah.
this entire song. Really solid vocals. Lyrics are okay. I think if the lyrics for this song would have clicked with me personally, this probably been like a 4 out of 5 or like a 5 out of 5. But they
Yeah.
didn't click for me personally. So I think that's kind of
Hmm.
where it doesn't 100% click.
I my favorite thing about this song is the complete change in the song, like right as you get towards the end. And
Right.
my note here is a little derogatory. I've written it's kind of like it starts like a nursery rhyme kind of song, and then
Oh sure.
turns into a more operatic finish. And I had
Mm.
like you don't even notice the change; it just happens naturally. Like it's
Hmm.
not like whoa, what happened there? It just it flows really, really well into
There's
that
no
back half
moment
of the
like where
song.
they push their foot on the effects pedal and it's like wow, it's a
Uh-huh.
smooth ramp.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of the song. Like, I like the lyrics too, but that, like, to be able to go from song A to song B and
Mm-hmm.
flow it nice and smoothly is pretty solid.
That's true. Um, Next up here is Delicious. I wrote,
Probably the most different song on the album, maybe.
yeah, like a fairly huge swing from last track to this track. I rated this a question mark out of 5. I really don't know how to feel about this one. It really good bass line in this one. I think his voice is really solid in this. The line with the delicious dark appeal is weird. It's,
Hmm.
lyrically, it's not really the strongest, but I kind of like it and I kind of don't like it at the same time, and I can't put my finger on anything I specifically like don't like or like in this one, and it's kind of driving me crazy.
Yeah, I feel the same, to be honest. Like, this is a song that's always stuck out to me for no real reason,
Right.
where it's just like, I think, honestly, depending on my mood, I could listen to this or skip it. Like, it
Hmm.
just depends on how I'm feeling. I do like the uptick into like a massively up tempo song.
Yep.
I think this also exposes the biggest flaw with this album, which is that this every single song on this album needed to be rearranged. I think from like the third track
Yes.
onwards, the
Yep.
whole thing needs to be rearranged.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like whiplash from one song to the next. You go from the last song, which is a slower down song, this song, which is
Hmm.
super quick, and then the next song is a super slow song again.
Yeah, because this could have been like track 2, and it'd be like, yeah, all right, man, let's go. Like, sure, here.
Hmm.
Um, so, like you were just talking about, the next track is Maybe Tomorrow is a Better Day. Um, this, I'm
This
going
is
to
my
be,
favorite song on the album, by the way. I know you're about to be mean, but that's
no,
fine.
I'm not, and I'm going to be honest. And I think I hadn't put it together until you just mentioned that this album needed to be put sequenced in a different order, because I think this is a really good song, but I'm done with the album at this point. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of, if you're sitting listening through it, especially after the delicious kind of like whiplashed us, and then we're going back down into a very clear ballad. Um, I I'm kind of, I think it's really good, and I think it's really, I feel like everybody musically is kind of firing on all cylinders on this song. Um,
Hmm.
and I think it's two sins, which it's not really guilty of either one of them. Is one, I think it's in the wrong spot on the album, and then two,
Yep.
I think it's too long. I think their sweet spot is 4 minutes. You do
Hmm.
like verse chorus, guitar solo, chorus chorus, and you're done. Like that is their kind of bread and butter. And I think this extending into the almost 5 minute range, even with most of it is like a longer intro, I think that doesn't really help it a lot, but I don't think it really hurts it.
Yeah. What's your number?
3 out of 5. I could go 4 depending on the day, but like,
So here is my suggestion.
mm-hmm.
We've only got one song left to talk about. We'll get there in a second. Actually, no. Let's talk. Let's talk about the next song first,
Okay.
and then I'll say my suggestion.
Dawn is the final track here on the album. Um, I I rated this 2 out of 5 because I don't think this should have closed out the album. I think maybe Tomorrow
Hmm.
is a Better Day probably should have. Um,
Congratulations, you just took two of my ideas.
okay, good. But I do have to say, I think his voice is probably the strongest here on the entirety of
Hmm.
the album. Like he is really stretching his kind of vocal legs here, and I think he does a really, really, really great job. Um, And I ran across, in watching the video for Carnival of Rust, the song, I ran across a live performance from like 2013 or something of that track, and his
Hmm.
voice sounds even stronger later on, like kind of the older he
Yeah,
gets. And I think this is kind of the first indication of that, of like, all right, like, yeah, you're really pushing it. You got, I don't think he showed as much in the first album as he did on this one, of just like, yeah, man, like you got a real solid voice, and you're showing it off. Um,
yeah. My literal note for this, by the way, says it feels like it's a power vocal song just for the ending.
right, right.
Hmm.
I want this one track. This is my track, and we're gonna put it on the album. It's like, all right, sure, I respect it. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. How do you feel
Oh.
about Dawn?
It's it's fine.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those songs where it's like, yeah, okay, I can see why it's the last song. I can see why it would be here, but I'm not a fan of this being the last song. Like you said,
Hmm.
my note for maybe tomorrow. Number one, I have a lot of emotional connection with maybe tomorrow will be a better day, so
Hmm.
I naturally have that much higher number wise. But that should be the last album, the last song on this album.
Yep.
Like that should be that's a good finish for this album,
Yeah.
I think. And my suggestion here is you take Dawn off the album completely. That's a B-side song,
Yeah.
whatever, that's fine.
100%.
You take um out of the two of them, I'd say Gravity goes. I would
Sure.
take Gravity and keep King of Fools and get Desire off this album straight away.
Like,
Um
you could have seen them release a like 8 or 9 track album out of this, and release an EP of just like the back house of the Carnival of Rust. Here's a live track and an acoustic thing and 3 B-sides. And that would have been okay.
mhm. Well, it's 12 songs, and a couple of
Yeah.
them are pretty bloody long. You
Yep.
take three out, you even take two out, Desire and Dawn. You reorganize it a little bit, you get Delicious higher in the order, you
Yep.
stick Maybe Tomorrow right at the end. I think it's a better flow through the whole album
Yep.
if you switch them things around.
Yeah. I agree. And I
Want
wonder
to know
how
the
much of
spreads,
that.
by the way?
What's that?
Do you want to know the spread?
Sure.
You were 3.5 numbers lower than me. So all
Okay.
of our ratings combined, I think the first album you were three less, and I think on this one you're 3.5 less. And
Okay.
it's the point
Pretty close.
5 of all the way.
Right. 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 Um. Yeah. I think this is a really solid album. I think if they were a little bit more mercenary about it, like we were talking about with reshuffling it and kind of cutting some stuff, I think that would have less would have been more for this. But I don't think it being 12 tracks and kind of having a couple of weaker tracks in here, I don't think it hurts it overall, like a huge amount. But I think there is. I think you can make some improvements and come out with a way better album. But I think this album's really solid. I think, like I had hoped, we were talking about at the beginning of this segment, I'd hoped they were kind of finding their feet, kind of finding their sound. Clearly, the lead singer is pushing his voice, and we're getting some new instrumentation. We're seeing some more keyboards in here, and I think that
Yeah.
I think it's a huge jump from the first one in a pretty positive direction for them, of just like, yeah, I think we're figuring it out, and I think they as a band are kind of they're getting real close to kind of perfecting their sound, at least pretty early on.
Yeah. Like the step up on like you said, just production quality alone was shocking having listened to them so close together.
Yep.
Like it was a very audible difference alone. It's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
You
that year
know.
served them well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's like you said, developing their own sound is pretty great. Like figuring out what works for them, what doesn't. Um, I believe they added another member or two as contractor work essentially for the next couple of albums. So we'll
Okay,
see how that goes.
sure.
Um, but yeah, overall, honestly I think this is a better album than Lift. I didn't think it would be based
Hmm.
on nostalgia, but I think overall this is definitely a better album, a better experience as a whole. It
Yeah,
just needs, like we said, those little tweaks, and I think it elevates it to a whole different level. If you
right.
you trim that fat a little bit and reorganize, I think it's great.
Yeah, we'll put out the TVGP remix on Spotify, and
Hmm.
we'll shuffle this album around. Yeah. Um, all right. Well, that's our second album here, Carnival of Rust. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to it with us, and hope
Uh-huh.
you join us next time for our next album. And we'll see you then. Bye.
Boy.